Now, many of you out there watching this would proudly identify with the term gun nut. I wouldn't call myself a gun nut. I used to own a lot of guns before that tragic boating accident. But I was never what I would call a gun nut. I just could field strip a AR-15, but I wasn't like an expert at it. But I'll tell you what I am an expert with, and that is with words. I'm a writer. That's kind of like a wordsmith. You can probably just think of me as a gunsmith, but with words. And I know what the words can do. I can tell the various calibers. I can tell how much recoil there's going to be. I have a pretty good idea of where they're manufactured, where they come from, what they can do, their history, all of that. And I saw something in the news yesterday that I found incredibly encouraging, because we are in a war of words and we're in a war of ideas. And this ammunition comes from the ground up, and it's extremely powerful. You might say it's sort of hollow point, high caliber, high velocity, armor piercing, freedom round. And it's got to do with language. This story comes to us from a writer named Josh Abbott on a website called Not the Bee. And by the way, that's just an idea of how crazy things have become these days in America. The Babylon Bee has become by far the best parody site in the world. And as events continue to spiral out of control, we now have to have a website called Not the Bee, assuring us that this latest headline is not part of parody. It is, in fact, real. But this particular one was dealing with an event that is, as I said, started from the ground up, and it's about the idea of sexual orientation. And it's a sexual orientation that I personally have, although if you don't, there's nothing wrong with it. And I suspect you probably are of this sexual orientation as well. It's called Superstraight. And here's why Superstraight is such a beautiful idea. In this reality TV program I saw, an individual who had been born male had decided to become transgender and dress and act like a female. And I think at the point of the story, this individual had started to take some hormone therapy, but I know for a certain fact that the individual had not had any surgery yet. So we're watching this episode, and this individual is out on the beach, on Santa Monica Beach, in fact, with two girlfriends, and the three of them are there in bathing suits. And a couple of guys come up, and one guy starts hitting on the individual. They set up a date. And we find out in the intervening time, when we come back, we find the individual at home in tears because the person who the individual had set up a date with canceled the date when that person found out that the girl he thought he was asking out on a date actually had boy baggage, let's just say. Now, the male who canceled the date was immediately demonized as transphobic. He seemed to be relatively sure of his sexuality, although he was in for a surprise that particular day, I guess. In any event, he was labeled transphobic. Now, stay with me here. He couldn't be labeled homophobic. You might think, well, this guy doesn't want to date an individual with boy baggage, but that wouldn't be accurate in the woke lexicon, you see. Because since the individual identified as a woman, the individual was a woman. And so he was not reacting to homophobia. It's not like he didn't want to be with a gay man. He didn't want to be with a transgendered woman. Anyway, this particular philosophy has been spreading. And now we begin to see the transgender movement pushing real hard to demonize any straight individual who doesn't want to date a transgendered person. Anyway, in response to all of this, an individual who's got the hashtag of @supa_STR8, Superstraight, basically started a hashtag, and it's trending, and it's called Superstraight. He's basically said this: what is Superstraight? This is a new sexuality that means you are only attracted to cisgender men or women. Cisgender is people who are born biologically one way and stay that way. This was made due to an influx of people saying that you aren't straight if you aren't attracted to trans women or men. We're part of the LGBTQ plus now. This is commando work. This is special forces thinking. So needless to say, the tolerant, diversity-loving, and inclusive people on the left didn't take kindly to this. You can't just make up your own sexual and gender identity, they cried. No, heaven forbid. You can't just invent something out of thin air like that. That wouldn't be playing fair. One of the things that I found to be absolutely the single greatest way to change people's minds, or at least change what they claim to believe, is to confront them with their own behaviors. I was at Oberlin College and talking about capitalism and all those other things, and all the socialists in Oberlin were talking about how evil capitalism is. And I said, okay, fair enough. Bring down your cell phones and we'll put them in a box and we'll go out to a pawn shop and we'll sell them. There's probably $2,000 worth of electronics here. We'll take your cell phones, you socialists. We'll turn them into $120 bills. We'll drive through the streets of Cleveland and distribute them to people who are in greater need. You're socialists, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. Bring down your phones. Let's get going. Let's redistribute some of this wealth. And none of them did it. And none of them wanted to bring their Xboxes down or their PlayStations either. You could feed a family in Africa for a year without money, but they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it because that phone is theirs, and they are all about private property. They just talk about socialism, and they believe it. But when you confront them with their own behaviors and tell them to make a decision, they can't do it. They won't do it. You've got them. The smoke comes out of their ears. This is exactly what this is in terms of this assault on the language. This is that perfect judo motion where you're using the adversary's momentum against them. Anybody can invent their own gender? Yup. Absolutely. It's just whatever you feel. Okay. I'm super straight. Yeah, I'm born male and I'm only attracted to people who are born female. It's just a weird kind of perversion I have, I guess. But who are you to judge? Who is anyone to judge? You've got them. How do these progressives express their tolerance and inclusiveness and love for all different viewpoints? Well, in the following tweets. Chesney says, if I ever see anyone calling themselves a super straight, I won't hesitate to kill them with my bare hands. Rat Hands, radical liberal, says, I'm going to attack and kill anyone identifying as super straight, by the way. And there's a smiley face there. YN tweets, I wish all super straight people an ugly evening. I'm coming to kill you all. All I have to say about this is that thank God that Joe Biden is making domestic terrorism his top priority, because these kind of death threats can no longer be tolerated, not against persecuted minorities like myself and other super straight individuals. I'm telling you, the tables are turning and they're turning fast. When you can make fun of somebody, that person's argument is over. And to conclude this episode, I'd like to leave you with the words of another gun nut who's good with words, a word write, an author, and his name was Mark Twain. And Mark Twain understood more about the human condition, especially about the American mentality, than anybody else I've ever read. And here's what Mark Twain wrote. No God and no religion can survive ridicule. No church, no nobility, no royalty or other fraud can face ridicule in a fair field and live. Ridicule is our most powerful weapon. It always has been, continues to be. Their most powerful weapon is shaming, humiliation, peer pressure, and all the rest. And all of the power that the left has over us is power that we have granted them because we don't want to be seen as the things they accuse us of. So, if we have the ability to ridicule the terms that they're using in order to shame us into compliance, then we rob those terms and those ideas of their power. And if we rob those ideas of their power, then their power over us evaporates like the morning mist. It's just that simple. We have to learn how to ridicule. We don't even have to learn. It's happening. We have to get on board the ridicule bandwagon. That's probably what I mean to say. And understand that by ridiculing not only the actual words, but the entire ideas, by laughing at them, not by fighting them, because by fighting them, you give them more power, you give them more energy, you give them more anger. No, just plain ridicule it, own it, accept it, spin it around. Gays did this with the word gay, and they did it with the word queer. They owned it, took away all of the pejorative sense to it, and basically became a badge of pride. Queer nation and all the rest. They owned the slur. And this is exactly what we have to do. Are you transphobic because you don't want to date a person who you thought maybe was female? You're a male, straight male, cis male, and you met an individual and it turns out that that person is actually a transgendered individual. Are you evil and wrong for that? No, not at all. You're just a member of a persecuted gender minority. You're superstraight. And in a world of tolerance and diversity, surely an individual's sexual orientation is not something to be held up for hatred and ridicule, is it?